Now we are together again, and I want to set our feet firmly on the ground before we take a single step further. This is not a class in collecting ideas. This is not another layer on your bookshelf. A class is a sacred, sacred, sacred undertaking. The aim here is not to add to the mind, but to empty it of its idols, and to stand in the recognition of what is. Non-duality is not a philosophy you admire. It is a recognition you live. Mark that well. It isn't what you believe about God. It is what you are when belief gets quiet and truth stands up in you. So let us say the one sentence that, if you will consent to it, ends your search. There is not God and you. There is God expressed as you. Do you see that? Not God somewhere and you somewhere else. Not God above and you below. Not God as the doer and you as the beggar. God as you. The very breath you are calling mine. The intelligence by which you hear these words. The life that animates you. God, announcing itself as individuality. And if you will sit with that, really sit with it, you will feel the floor of your being stop trembling. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. I am not deifying a human being. I am denying a human being as a separate center and acknowledging God as the only I. Now the confusion comes in, because we have made of non-duality a thing to argue. We polish sentences like stones and toss them at each other. All is one. There is no other. Meanwhile, the rent comes due. The body aches, the marriage frays, and fear crawls up the stairs at 2 in the morning. And then we say, well, perhaps later, perhaps in meditation, perhaps in the next world. No, no. If what we are saying cannot meet you on your street, in your kitchen, at your office desk, it is not truth realized. It is philosophy admired. We are not here to admire. We are here to awaken. All right then, what is the promise? The promise is that oneness can be translated into a way of living that meets the daily claims without your taking up arms against a second power. We are not going to fight shadow with shadow. We are not going to set God and evil to wrestling and hope God wins today. We will learn to recognize one presence, one power, one life, one law, and we will rest in that recognition until what looked like opposition is seen as appearance only. Do you follow that? We will have much to say about as, is, and am, because those 3 words are the doorway from concept to identity. But for this foundation, you must hear the first word clearly. As. God as you, now. And please, one more safeguard. This is not self-glorification. This is self-evacuation. The pretense of I, me, mine is the veil. When the separate I grows quiet, there is a gentle fact, God being God, as the very you that listens. That is all. That is enough. Rest there. Let it register. There is not God and you. There is God expressed as you. Now, do you see that? Now, before we move to any practice at all, we must agree on a single definition, because without it, you will wander in circles and call it spirituality. The only way the word God has meaning in this work is as infinite being. Not very big, not larger than life. Infinite, measureless, boundless, without outside or other. Now mark this well, because this becomes an anchor in every storm. If God is infinite, then where, tell me, would there be any room for a second life, a second law, a second power. Where would it dwell? In what territory outside infinity? And if there is no outside, then where could you put it? Do you see that? Therefore follows the most uncomfortable comfort you will ever receive. Oneness is not a mystical mood. It is the only logical possibility. We are not saying, poetically, we are all connected, as if cords and threads run between many centers. No, there are not many centers with lovely bridges strung among them. There is one presence, one power, one life, one law, being itself as infinity. Is that clear? Not connectedness, identity. Not relationship, expression. God expressed as being, appearing as infinite variety, yet never fracturing the one. Do you follow that? Now the human mind objects. But surely there must be room for a little something else, a stray germ, a stubborn sin, an economic trend line. Where would it be? In a pocket of space the infinite forgot to fill? And what would it be made of? Substance? Then you have admitted a second substance. Law? Then you have granted a second lawgiver. This is why, in our work, we never elevate a condition to the dignity of law. We examine every so-called law of discord as a claim, not a fact. If God is the only law, then anything parading as law against God, law of contagion, law of heredity, law of decline, law of accident, must be brought to the light and recognized as suggestion only. Do you see? You are not fighting evil. You are denying it jurisdiction. Now don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. I am not telling you to shut your eyes to appearances as if that were bravery. I am telling you to measure every appearance against the definition of God as infinite, and refuse it the status of cause. If there is one cause, infinite and whole, what second cause could operate? If there is one life, what separate life could sicken apart from life itself? If there is one mind, what mind could invent a law to bind God's expression? Is that clear? Do you follow that? Then let's stop talking about it as philosophy and accept the consequence. When fear whispers, "Here is a power that can hurt you," you answer, where would it be? Outside the infinite? When memory says, "This runs in the family," you answer, what family, if identity is God as? What lineage, if origin is infinite being? When the news declares a law of shortage, you answer, only God is law. Therefore abundance is eising as sufficiency. This is not bravado, it is logic lived. And when you live it, quietly, persistently, the spell of second power thinking begins to break. One presence, one power, one life, one law. As is and am. Do you see that? Now, last night we took up 3 words, as, is, am. And I warned you that this was not a grammar lesson. This is identity. This is the master key that takes non-duality out of the clouds and sets it in your ribs where breath moves. Mark this well, because if you catch it, you will never again go begging at a door that is your own. As, is, am. Do you see that? Not 3 ideas to admire, 3 movements of one fact. First, as. God as. Expression. Not God over there and a creature here, but God being God as what you call your individuality, as what you call world, as the very scene of your experience. This is the end of separation talk. If there is God as, there is not God and. Then, is. God is. Not will be, not was, not sometimes, not when you are deserving. God is. Being is. Life is. Law is. Presence is. God just is. God is ising all the time. And if God is, then all that is real must be included in that isness, never outside it, never competing with it. Therefore, and here is the third word, am. I am. Not I, the self-assertive person with a history and a scrapbook. Not I, the bundle of likes and memories. I am, the point where God as and God is register as conscious identity. Do you follow that? As is and am. As is and am. Now don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. I am not telling you to declare, I am God, as a boast of the human sense. That is the old idolatry with a new polish. The personal self yields. The divine I remains. The I that says, I am here is not Joe or Mary puffed up. It is the I that spoke, I am that I am. It is the one identity individualized as you, but never confined to you. If you try to make a separate little deity out of your personality, you will lose this teaching in the first 10 minutes. We are not enthroning ego. We are dissolving it into the fact of God identity. Let me show you how this collapses the distance. A fear arises. Your heart jumps. The phone rings with bad news. The body suggests pain. Watch the old habit. How do I get God to come fix this? How do I persuade? How do I plead? Stop right there. Start with as. God as this very instant, as this very place, leaves no second place for a rival power. Then is. God is. Presence, law, life, harmony, now. Not incoming, not delayed, is. Therefore, am. I am the visibility of that isness, the transparency through which God's completeness appears. What God is, I am. Present, now. Do you see how different that is from I, this separate person, will use truth to change a condition? No. Truth uses you by being you. As is and am. As is and am. Let it roll until the mind's distance-making breaks. When you catch even a flicker, the temperature of your fear drops. You did not get anything from God. You recognize that there was nothing missing from God as you. And in that recognition, the picture that called itself problem begins to thin out. Please remember, this is not a slogan you paste over pain. This is a turning, an about-face in consciousness. Several times a day, quietly, without showmanship. God as. God is. I am. Sit there until the words drain into awareness, and the awareness stands without words. Then carry it onto the street. If in the very moment of appearance you can let as lead you to is, and is to am, you will feel the quick, calm authority of identity. And with that, you are no longer a seeker trying to import God. You are the place of God's appearing. Now, do you see that? Now let us make this so plain that even your hands can feel it. Take a tumbler in your hand. What is it? You say, a glass. All right, but look closer. There is not glass and a tumbler. There is glass formed as a tumbler. The substance is glass. The form is tumbler. They are not two things joined. They are one thing showing itself in a particular way. Do you see that? If you shatter the form, you have not destroyed glass. You have only disturbed that configuration. The substance remains what it is, glass. Now take a table, mahogany. Again, there is not mahogany and a table. There is mahogany formed as table. The grain, the strength, the tone, all mahogany, appearing as table. You do not treat the table as a second kind of thing. You know that the very qualities you admire in the table are the qualities of mahogany presenting themselves in that use. Do you follow that? Form cannot be separate from its substance. It can only reveal it. Bring that right home. There is not God and a person. There is God formed as individual expression. Not a deity in the sky and a creature on the ground trying to get together. God as. And therefore, all that you truly are, identity, life, intelligence, love, is God being God in the mode called you. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. I am not making a God out of a human personality. I am denying a human apartness. The you we honor here is the transparency for God's self-revelation. As is and am. God as, there is the substance. God is, there is the fact. I am, there is the form, the individualized appearing. Now make it practical. The qualities of the substance constitute the form. If the substance is glass, the form shares clarity, hardness, transparency. If the substance is mahogany, the form shares strength, endurance, luster. Therefore, if God is the substance of your being, then peace is native to you, because God is peace. Wholeness is native to you, because God is wholeness. Intelligence is native to you, because God is intelligence. Love, order, abundance, harmony, these are not ornaments added later. They are the very qualities of the one out of which you are formed as expression. Do you see that? You do not acquire them. You disclose them. But I feel separate. Yes, and here comes that terrible, terrible word, feel. Feeling is not proof of reality. It is proof of a premise entertained. If you hold the premise, I am a self apart, you will feel fear, lack, loneliness. But those feelings do not change the substance any more than a dent in the table turns mahogany into plastic. They are the report of a mistaken belief, and beliefs do not constitute being. Change the premise, and the feeling changes. Recognize God as your substance, and you will begin to feel the peace that is already there, because it belongs to what you are, not to what you wish to become. Do you see why you can't get God? You can only recognize what is already so. You cannot add divinity to a form any more than you can pour more glass into a tumbler already made of glass. You awaken to the fact, God as. God is. Therefore I am. And as you rest there, quietly, without trying to import a second power, the very qualities of the substance announce themselves in the form, your thoughts clear, your actions steady, your days ordered. Not by efforting up a virtue, but by letting the substance be what it is as you. Now do you see that? Now, and here comes that terrible, terrible word. But pain. But disease, but war, but cruelty, but the screaming on the radio, the picture of the child under rubble, the man with the bottle, the woman with the diagnosis. But my depression, but my bills, but my body. Let's not whisper it. Say it right out so there's no pious fog between us. This is what rises to choke the truth before it has a chance to flower. Do you see that? All right. We will not practice sentimental bypassing in this room. We will not put a ribbon on a wound and call it healed. We honor the sting. We admit the gasp in the middle of the night, the ache in the bone, the weight of grief. But, now mark this well because your whole path turns on it. To acknowledge an appearance is not to grant it reality, power, or law. We can say, I see the picture, without bowing before it as a second cause. Do you follow that? Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. Non-duality is not the denial that you and I experience appearances. It is the denial that appearances are reality with God-ordained law behind them. The human sense says, this is here because there is a law of disease, a cause of lack, a power of hatred. The spiritual sense answers, where would that law abide? Outside the infinite? By what substance would it act, other than God? If God is the only substance, the only law, then anything unlike God cannot have law, cannot have cause, cannot have continuity. It can show up as a picture in consciousness, felt and feared, yes, but it cannot be a second power. Do you see that? Now here is the moral knife edge. If you make evil real, you have made God responsible for it. If you say, this cancer, this war, this cruelty is, as fact, as law, as power, then you have given the holy name to that which contradicts God's nature. And then you will either hate God or flatter God, but you will never rest in God. On the other hand, if you consent to see discord as appearance without law, you are not excusing it. You are removing the worship that feeds it. You are meeting it without hatred and without fear, which is the only atmosphere in which healing can register. Is that clear? But it hurts. Yes, and in the very face of the hurt, we refuse it jurisdiction. We begin with God, not with the pain, and we hold to one presence, one power, one life, one law, until the hypnosis of a second cause loosens. This is not coldness. This is compassion armed with truth. Hatred tries to crush a supposed second power. Love discerns that no such power exists and therefore has nothing to crush. And in that recognition, the fever of fear cools, the mind quiets, and the picture begins to thin. Not because we forced a change, but because truth recognized is light, and pictures do not survive the dawn. Do you follow? So let the protest speak, and then let it be answered. But my bills! God is law. Therefore supply is not a caprice, but being's own order. But my body! God is life. Therefore no competing life can decay apart from life. But war! God is one. Therefore no divided power can have divine sanction. We are not naive. We are exact. We are taking from discord the false dignity of law. And now we must go further. We must understand the nature of error itself, what it is, how it operates, why it seems so persuasive, and why, when seen correctly, it dissolves. In our next step, we will look straight at this mechanism of appearance, so that you may meet it on the street and in your home with calm authority and quiet success. As is and am. Now, do you see that? Now let us look at it straight, without poetry, without evasion. What is error? Not a thing, not a force, not a second substance sneaking into God's universe. Error is a mental image, a suggestion, a hypnotic influence, setting itself up as presence but lacking substance, lacking law, lacking cause, lacking actual effect. It has seeming, it has shock value. It can frighten and pain and stampede the unguarded consciousness. But mark this well, its only foothold is acceptance. Do you see that? Take your eyes out onto the track. In the distance, the rails meet. You have seen it 100 times. And if you were childish enough to send a crew to pry them apart at that far point, you would be laughed back into sense. Why? Because their meeting has no law in steel, no cause in physics. It is an appearance produced by the conditions of seeing. Walk to the place where the rails meet and, where is the junction now? Do you see? You cannot mend what never touched. You can only stop believing the picture. Lift your gaze to the sea. There is the horizon, an edge, a rim, a line beyond which, once upon a time, sailors feared the plunge. Sail to it, and what happens? The edge withdraws. It has no geography. You cannot arrive at a line that has no substance. The only way to conquer the horizon is to know it for what it is, a picture drawn by your own viewpoint. Stand before the mountains at twilight. The sky sits on the ridge, blue upon brown. It seems to rest there. It even seems to press a bit. Climb, and where is the joint? The sky on the mountain dissolves as you approach, because there never was a joint to find. The contact point moves with you. There is no law of adhesion binding heaven to granite. There is only a way of seeing. Now translate that to your Tuesday morning. Disease appears and shouts, law. Law of contagion, law of heredity, law of decline. Lack appears and shouts, law. Economic tides, scarcity ratios, trend lines. Accident appears and shouts, law. Chance, probability, misfortune. And the human mind, trained to worship second causes, bows. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. We are not indifferent to pain. We are refusing to sanctify it. The only place these so-called laws operate is in the mesmerism of a mind accepting them. Your work is not to fight a disease, a recession, an accident. Your work is to see through a picture. And that is very, very unpopular, because it denies you the drama of combat and calls you to the discipline of discernment. Do you see that? You are not prying rails apart. You are not sailing harder to catch the horizon. You are not chiseling the sky off the mountain. You are waking up. Spiritual recognition, not human willpower. Communion, not argument. As, is, am. Start with God as the only substance, law, life. Rest in God is. Let that isness identify as I am. Then look back at the picture and recognize it for what it is. Suggestion without law, claim without cause, shadow without substance. And in that recognition, fear loosens, the heat comes down, the mind clears, and the appearance begins to yield because it never had law to sustain it. Now mark this well, because it will save you years. If you treat appearances as realities, you will spend your life working, managing, manipulating, bargaining, improving shadows. You may get temporary rearrangements, but you will not demonstrate freedom. You will chase the horizon of betterment and never arrive. But if you accept your responsibility to behold one presence, one power, one life, one law, and persist quietly, daily, case by case, the spell breaks. Discord is not a second power. It is an appearance without law, dissolved by spiritual recognition. Is that clear? Do you see that? Now we must answer the haunting question that lingers after the pictures fade. If oneness is the fact, why do we seem so terribly two? Turn, then, to the book that has been handed to us not as geology or biology, but as spiritual instruction. There are two creations spoken of in Genesis. In the first, God creates, God beholds, and God pronounces, "Very good." Complete, whole, lacking nothing. No struggle, no curse, no sweat of brow. That is creation. That is. Then, watch the shift. The narrative turns and a second account appears. A mist rises, a garden is planted, a man is formed of dust. A prohibition is given. A serpent speaks. Shame enters. Banishment follows. Two stories, two tones, two universes. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. There are not two realities. There is one reality and a story superimposed by the human mind. The first is revelation. The second is allegory of a dream. Now, what is the dream? We eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That is the poetic way of saying we consent to duality. We take into consciousness the belief in two powers, two laws, two substances. And we do a subtler thing yet. We accept a second I apart from God. The very moment that premise is swallowed, a new world springs up, a world of fear and defense, lack and ambition, guilt and pride. We sow fig leaves because a separated I must hide. We hear a voice as if it were coming from elsewhere because we have posited elsewhere. We are driven to toil by the sweat of our brow because we have posited an existence outside fullness. Do you see that? Mark this well. The culprit is not sin as a moral tally, but the sense of I, me, mine, as a separate center. That is the prodigal leaving the Father's house. We set up a fellow called Adam or Mary or Gerald. This one must get, must keep, must defend, must deserve. And we wander into the far country of second causes. And out there, we waste our substance with riotous living. What substance? Our God-awareness, squandered on the belief that life, health, supply, safety are outside to be fetched, bargained for, or stolen. Suffering follows, not as divine punishment, but as arithmetic. Build on a false premise, and the sums do not add. Lean your ladder on air, and you fall. Live as a self apart, and you feel apart. Apart from peace, apart from love, apart from law. Is that clear? Do you see that? But why does it hurt so much? Because the pain is the pressure of reality against unreality. It is the mercy of the infinite refusing to confirm our idol of a second self. Not a wrath from above, a wake-up within. The swine husks of the prodigal are not God's vengeance. They are the taste of what a false premise can afford. Now the hope, and it is immediate. The prodigal came to himself and said, "I will arise and go to my father." That remembrance is our turning. In our language, I drop the premise of a second I. God as, God is. Therefore, I am. I arise from I, me, mine, and return to identity. No bargaining, no pleading, just homecoming. And when he was yet a great way off, the Father ran to meet him. Do you see the nature of grace? The distance was never in God. It was in the dream of a second self. The moment of remembrance collapses miles into moments. Right there, without ceremony, without delay, the ring, the robe, the sandals. Authority, sonship, freedom. That is not fortune changing. That is premise corrected. And with premise corrected, the figures add, the ladder finds rock, and the peace that is felt as I am. Now we come to the word prayer. And we must clear the table, because most of what passes for prayer is the prolonging of our exile. Mark this well, because it will save you years. God is not withholding anything. Therefore, God cannot give you anything. God is. God just is. God is ising all the time. If God is infinite fulfillment, where would there be a warehouse of extra blessings to be dispensed for good behavior? Do you see that? The only thing that can come to you is the recognition of what already is. The shift is not in God. The shift is in consciousness. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. I am not belittling the heart that cries. I am pointing it to the door that opens. Petition assumes two-ness, me over here without, a God over there with, and then tries to negotiate a transfer. That is the old tree of knowledge of good and evil hiding in church clothes. Please change this condition. Please fix that person. Please send supply. Every please, polished with our sincerity, still hides the premise. I am a part, and God must act. But if God is infinite, where would God act from? And to where would God send? Who would receive except God's own expression? Is that clear? Prayer in this work is communion. We want nothing of God but the joy of communion. Let me sit here and abide in thy presence, thy grace. Not to get, not to persuade, simply to rest in what is. Be still, not as a tactic to earn a result, but because stillness is the atmosphere in which God is, resolves as I am. You do not ask the sun to shine. You step out of the shade. You do not instruct the ocean to be wet. You consent to be the wave that knows its oceanness. So in prayer, we cease our requests and become transparency. As is and am. God as, this moment, this place. God is, unwithholding fullness. Therefore I am, the appearing of that fullness, here. But isn't that passivity? What about my bills, my child's illness, my country at war? No. Communion is the only non-passive act, because it refuses the hypnosis of a second cause. Petition fights shadows. Communion turns on the light. Out of communion rises guidance, courage, and sometimes the quiet, wordless dissolving of a picture that had terrified you 5 minutes earlier. Action may follow, yes, but it will be action born of realization, not panic born of separation. Do you see the difference? Now take the posture. Several times a day, without shopping lists, without emotional sweat. Father, thou art. I am in thee, and thou art the life of me. I rest. No pleading, no bargaining, just abiding. Sit until the compulsion to do something eases and presence is felt, not as a sensation necessarily, but as a great okayness, a release. Words fall away, awareness remains. As is and am settles like a key in a lock, and a click within announces alignment. In that instant, you have prayed. You have not moved God. You have moved out of the way. From here, our work becomes precise. Communion is not an escape hatch. It is the base of operations. On that base, we will meet specific claims, disease, lack, danger, as appearances without law. And we will hold to one presence, one power, one life, one law, until fear yields. But that is the next step. For now, begin by ceasing to ask and start to abide. Start with God, not the problem. Let communion be your atmosphere morning and night, on the street and at the sink. And you will find, quietly, naturally, that the search grows still, the heart unknots, and the one who is announces as the I that am. Do you see that? Now we go from communion to case. Mark this well, because it is the dividing line between wandering and demonstration. You will go nowhere if you begin with the problem. The first word is always God. Not the person, not the condition. God. Drop the person and problem right out of thought, as if you were setting down a heavy sack at the door, and step into the sanctuary within. Do you see that? All right. The arc of treatment is simple, exact, and must be lived, not recited. First, acknowledge God as the only presence, the only power, the only law. Sit right there until one power means one. No rival, no partner, no opposite. Second, realize God as the substance of this very moment, this very place. Not God afar, God as being the life, the mind, the law that constitutes what appears here. Third, identify the claim as appearance without law. Name it for what it pretends to be, a suggestion. Then remove from it the false dignity of law, cause, or power. Fourth, rest in the realized truth until the inner release comes, the click, the eased breath, the quiet that says, "It is." Then and only then, look out and take whatever simple step is given. Do you follow that? Now the false laws parade themselves. Expose them. Law of contagion? Where would it abide if God is all? Germs, infection, heredity, these announce a second life, a second law. Refuse them jurisdiction. Law of accident? Chance cannot govern an infinity already full. Law of economic cycles? Boom and bust are pictures, not decrees upon being. Refuse to be hypnotized by ratios. Law of other people's hatred? There is not a power in hate. There is only one power, and it is love. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. We are not arguing with symptoms. We are stripping suggestion of authority by enthroning one law. Now take as/is/am and let it do the work. God as my life. God is the only life. Therefore, I am life, not vulnerable matter, not a chemistry subject to contagion, not a timetable subject to decay. God as mind. God is the only mind. Therefore, I am the showing forth of that mind, clear, ordered, unconfused, untouched by panic. God as law. God is the only law. Therefore, I am under grace, not under cycles, odds, or opinions. As is and am. Do you see that? Let's apply. Anxiety spiral. Do not start my fear, my pattern, my trauma. Start God. One presence, one power, one mind. Sit until mind is felt as the substance of this very room. Then turn and name fear a lawless suggestion. There is no law compelling agitation. The rails do not meet. Rest until the pulse of stillness registers. Often the breath evens. Thoughts unstring. You did not fight fear. You saw it as picture, and presence dissolved it. Relationship conflict. Do not enter a courtroom in your thought, defending you and prosecuting them. Drop both parties. God is the only presence in this home, this office. God as their identity as mine, one life individualized. The supposed power of resentment is not law. Rest until the inner heat cools. Then you may speak one simple word or no word at all. And harmony begins to show because you refused a second power in the scene. Money pressure. Bills, deadlines, markets, pictures shouting law. Start with God. God, but as the place where God is, as, and I am. Do you see that? Now some of you are sitting here saying, I understand. And yet the needle of your life has not moved. Mark this well because it will save you long, weary years. Understanding in the head is not realization in consciousness. Watching explanations is not practice. Nodding yes is not communion. You can sit with me through 100 hours and still walk out under the same old hypnosis if you do not take up the responsibility to realize again and again until realization becomes the atmosphere of your being. Do you see that? Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. This is not a scold. It is a rescue. Spiritual faculty is educated by use, not by applause. The ear learns the pitch of presence by returning to it every day, not by remembering that there is such a pitch. The inner eye learns to see the rails as never touching by walking and walking and walking to the junction until the joke is felt in your bones. The heart learns the weightlessness of one power by resting in one presence morning, noon, and night, until fear quietly loses the right to shout. Persistence is not an ordeal you give to God. It is the way you dissolve the crust of centuries of accepted law in your own consciousness. As, is, am. Repeated, lived, felt, until it stands up by itself in you. Now the traps, because they are subtle and they waste lives. 1. Using non-duality to avoid feeling. It's only appearance, you say, and you close your heart. That is not truth. That is refusal. Let the human sense feel what it feels, but deny it jurisdiction. Sit in compassion and then take from the picture the dignity of law. 2. Using non-duality to judge. If they knew the truth, they would be healed. That is tampering with another person's consciousness, and it will turn and bite you. Lift them in silence into the one presence. Leave the outcome to grace. 3. Wearing non-duality as a badge. Quoting as/is/am at the lunch table while panicking at midnight only proves you collected phrases. 4. Using non-duality to duck responsibility. There is no me, so I have nothing to do. No. The very recognition that there is only God as you is your assignment to be the transparency for grace. Is that clear? Here is your work, and I want you to take it as a sacred, sacred, sacred undertaking. Choose one recurring claim: body, money, relationship. For 7 days, every day, at set times, meet it with the same treatment sequence. First, God. One presence, one power, one life, one law. Sit until that means one. Second, God as this very place, this very moment. Third, identify the claim as appearance without law. Name the false law it boasts, contagion, lack, resentment, and deny it jurisdiction. Fourth, rest in realized oneness until the inner release is felt. The click, the ease, the quiet. Do not measure by symptoms. Measure by the peace that comes. Then take whatever simple step is given. Repeat at the next set time. Yes, even if the picture shouts, especially then. Do you see that? Some cases yield like frost at sunrise. Some thaw like winter itself, inch by inch. The issue is never God's willingness. God is. The issue is our steadiness in recognition. Hold to one presence and one power and one law through the hours and the days, and you will find that what once terrified you no longer commands your consent. The rails never did meet. Now you know it when the fog rolls in. Stay at it. If you stop when the picture is loud, you have bowed again to a second cause. If you persist, quietly, faithfully, the habit of separation breaks and realization, no longer a momentary glimpse, becomes your stable consciousness. Take up your responsibility and refuse to put it down. This is how the seeker becomes the finder. Not by gathering brighter sentences, but by returning, until God as God is stands revealed as the I that am, and you cannot be fooled by pictures anymore. Do you see that? Now we take it out of the chair and onto the sidewalk. What is the practice when the world shouts at you from the curb, from the newsstand, from the hospital corridor? You do not turn away. You do not freeze. You do not grant it power. Right there, in the split second before the old habit of fear grabs the reins, you plant your consciousness. God is the only presence here. God is the only power here. God is the only life here. God is the only law here. Do you see that? A siren rips the air. A man is on the pavement. The crowd surges with panic. Your first vocation is not hysteria. It is recognition. Silently, without display. Father, thou art this place. I acknowledge thy life as this one's life. Thy law as the only law operating. Thy mind as the clarity of every responder. The claim of danger is not a law. It is a picture. Now, call for help. Give aid as you are led, and keep your inner poise. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. This is not irresponsible denial. It is the refusal to add your mental consent to an appearance while you take whatever human steps are required. Compassion without panic. Service without two powers. Is that clear? You pass a doorway and meet a drunk's glare. Do not label evil other. Refuse the hypnotism that would set up two selves, one condemned and one superior. Within, acknowledge. Christ is the identity here. God as this man, regardless of the present picture. The craving, the shame, the threat. Lawless suggestions, not decree. Lift him up in your consciousness. You may speak a gentle word, you may simply move on. Either way, you have not joined the mob of judgment that cements the picture. Do you see that? A headline blares, war. Do not bow to the idol of divided power. Enter your inner sanctuary and declare, not as argument, but realization. One presence is the life of all. One mind governs. One law prevails. The rage, the propaganda, the fear are not powers. They are suggestions. Refuse to demonize peoples, parties, nations. The moment you make a villain with a second life, you lose your sight. Hold all sides inside the one presence, and then take your human step. Vote, serve, give, reconcile, as you are led from peace, not from frenzy. At home, a child's fever spikes. Begin with God. God as life here. God is wholeness. Therefore, I am the witness to wholeness. Deny a law of contagion the dignity of law. Then call the doctor if needed, cool the brow, follow sound instruction, while you keep guard at the door of consciousness so that fear does not write the script. This is the inner move. We meet every scene with the as, is, and am. God as, God is, therefore I am. And in that atmosphere we act. Now mark this well, because it is how truth becomes walkable. The street is your practice hall. You see a limp, a quarrel, a closed sign, and you do not pass by as a tourist of non-duality, nor do you dive into the sea of second causes. You stand in the middle as transparency. Silently, steadily, you lift. You refuse to fear. You refuse to hate. You refuse to worship appearances. Over days and years, this stance becomes an atmosphere. People will feel safe near you and not know why. Rooms will quiet when you enter, and you will not take credit. It is simply that God as God is has come to be recognized as the I that am. And you carry that recognition like a climate. This is living it, not talking it. This is how the world is met without granting it power, and how, step by step, you discover you were home all along. Do you see that? Now we come home, and I mean now. Not after the bills are paid, not after the lab report changes, not after you finish improving your temperament. Now. The prodigal's journey ends not in a road, but in a remembrance. I am home in thee. That home is not geography, it is identity. The moment you drop the premise of a second self and let the truth stand as itself, God as, God is, therefore I am, you find you never left. The miles were dream miles. The hunger was dream hunger. The Father's love was never suspended. Do you see that? Let me gather the thread so you can feel the whole fabric in your hands. We began with a shocking sentence that ends the search. There is not God and you. There is God expressed as you. Infinity leaves no room for a second something. Therefore, oneness is not a mystical extravagance. It is logic. From there we took the key, 3 little words that open the door. As, is, am. God as form. God is fullness. Therefore, I am the appearing of that fullness. Then we faced the world's but and refused it divinity. Error is appearance, suggestion, hypnotic picture, rails that seem to meet, a horizon that seems an edge, a sky that seems to rest on a mountain, without cause, substance, or law. We shifted prayer from petition to communion. No bargaining, no pleas, only abiding presence. We carried that into treatment. Start with God, unseat false law. Rest until the inner click. Then take the simple step. We moved it from chair to street and practiced, quietly, steadily, until recognition began to live us. That is the arc. That is how the prodigal turns, remembers, and arrives. Now mark this well, because it is the seal on the work. Be still. Not as a trick to get a result, but because stillness is your home atmosphere. Lay the tools down for a moment, the verses, the arguments, the needs. Just let as be. Let is be. Let am be. Father, thou art. I am in thee, and thou art the life of me. Stay there without strain until the need to figure it out subsides like a wind dropping at evening. In that hush, the ring, the robe, the sandals are not given. They are recognized. Authority, sonship, freedom, already the nature of your being, felt. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. Do not turn this into your new philosophy, your shinier set of concepts. This is the end of philosophy and the beginning of realization. Concepts describe. Realization is. You are not to collect brighter sentences. You are to be the transparency through which God is recognized as the only presence, power, life, and law. Do you see that? And so here is your charge for the week, and I want you to carry it like breath. When the terrible, terrible word, but, rises, but my pain, but the news, but the bill, pause and let one sentence stand up in you. There is not God and me. There is God as me. Say it, not as defiance, as recognition. Rest in it, 2 or 3 breaths. Then let your peace lead the step you take. This is home. This is the end of seeking. I am home in thee. God as me. Now.